This is one of Cluny the Scourge's Rome Total War online matches, and I am playing as Thrace. I have taken 6 units of phalanx pikemen, 4 of whom are at the front forming my main battle line, who will fix my enemy in place. I then have 1 unit of Bastani warriors and 4 of folksmen. They all have the gold weapon upgrade, and they will form the striking component of my army, who will outflank the enemy and roll up their line. I have 6 units of archers deployed on loose formation behind my phalanxes, and I have 2 more phalanx pikemen in the rear. That second line is intended to protect against cavalry strikes against my archers. We're playing on the Sarmatian Mound map, a map which is based around one great hill in the centre, which both sides quite often attempt to seek control of right from the beginning. My hope is that my opponent will do precisely that, and so blunder directly into the face of my phalanxes and be fixed in place. Now my opponent, Julius Ceasar, misspelt, is playing as Julii Romans. He's taken 4 units of Roman armoured general bodyguards, 4 units of urban cohorts, 3 archer auxilia, and 2 units of scorpions in the rear. In other words, he's selected quality over numbers, a few hard-hitting units. As the battle commences, my opponent sends his cavalry swinging around to the right, his left, deploys his urban cohorts into testudo formation, and orders his archers and scorpions to begin firing on the hill, which I have rushed my forces forward to seize control of. It quickly becomes apparent that my opponent's strategy is not to dispute control of the height advantage, but to use superior long-range missiles. Archer auxilia have a longer range than my regular archers, together with his artillery, to force me to come down to him. The choice of scorpions for his artillery was an unusual one for that purpose. Onagers would have been preferable. Scorpions are best deployed on the flanks of your infantry and fired at a defilating angle, inflicting the panicked by artillery morale hit effect as he approaches, inflicting some casualties at short range, which onagers can't do. They simply can't target units at short range, and avoiding the risk of a shortfall, inflicting casualties to his own men. Their missile trajectory simply doesn't have the necessary high elevation to achieve the task that he has assigned them here, however. Now, his cavalry maneuvers, over on the left there, seem to be designed to threaten to strike in between my lines of phalanx pikemen and attack my archers. Those archers, by the way, though they are going through the animation of drawing their bows, are not actually firing any missiles. I've placed them in exactly the wrong location, just behind the crest of the hill, so that they can't get the necessary angle of elevation to strike at my opponent. Similarly, however, most of his missiles aren't actually hitting me either. They're flying over the heads of my troops and doing very little harm, even though his men are actually releasing their missiles. His scorpions at present can't draw a bead on me at all. They simply don't have the necessary line of sight. So I realize what's happening, and I order my Thracian troops forward a little way down the hill so that my archers can actually do their job. My opponent is here making a mistake. What he should have done at this point, as he saw my forces bearing down on him from a significant height advantage, and with my archers now within range of his, was to abandon his artillery and rush his infantry back onto level ground. He could then have used his longer range archers to force me to come down after him, and we would have fought on the plain without the height advantage. Instead, he becomes fixated on his original plan, is unable to adapt, and I fix him in place neatly with my phalanxes. Urban cohorts may be incredibly tough and disciplined troops, but they still can't penetrate a Sarissa phalanx in, say, 5 ranks, and mine are in 8. Now I've sent my barbarian infantry sweeping around the left there, as you saw. They'll be gaining a combat bonus from fighting in the snow, and soon my opponent's incorrect deployment of his scorpions behind rather than in between and to the flanks of his infantry is going to tell against him seriously. They're going to fire into his own men, as you will soon see. Now, zipping back about 2 minutes in time to see what he's done with his cavalry as I approached him, he deploys them against my archers, just as I anticipated. My rear line of phalanx pikemen come into effect, doing their job of protecting against just this eventuality. I also rush 1 unit from my forward line back, Those are all very strong cavalry units, 2 hit points per man. But they're tangled up on those archers they were trying to destroy. They only managed to rout a single one of them. And now, separated from the herd, facing numerical superiority, causing a concerned by number of enemy morale effect, and being skewered by pike phalanxes from both sides, they really don't have too much of a chance. It reminds me of one of those villains' trapped dungeons, where the hero blunders in and finds spikes emerging from both sides at once, and he's only saved from a tortuously, exquisitely slow death by impalement, usually because the heroine finds the switch that turns it off at the last second. Except in that movie, Krull. Have you seen that one? That fantasy movie where they blunder into just such a trap, and they do actually get skewered and die, except for like one survivor, I think. Which was in fact precisely Julius Caesar's fate here. A single unit of very badly damaged Roman armoured general bodyguards escaped, the others were routed and crushed. So, on the left I'm completing my encirclement with my more mobile barbarian troops, rolling up the enemy's line just as I had intended. Now as you can see, those urban cohorts simply can't get through that phalanx. They're being held at a distance. They can work around the edges and start cutting into the men there, but there just aren't enough of them to do the business. The brutal, sordid, murderous business. My opponent really is paying the price for not withdrawing and attempting outflanking manoeuvres. And there you saw it. He just shot his own men right in the rear. Was it an accident, or did the commander of the Scorpion unit owe money to someone in that urban cohort? Perhaps they'd slept with his wife. The fog of war, we'll never know. So, with the panicked by artillery effect added to the mix, his front line disintegrates. He sends his last Roman armoured general unit futilely into the heart of a pike unit. The upside of my opponent's front line now being out of the way is that he can pour missiles from Scorpions and Archers into my pikemen at point blank range quite freely. I can do likewise, and I now rush forward to destroy his artillery, and I've switched to fire arrow to induce the panicked by fire effect that, since his troops will be wavering, having seen the rest of their army break, will encourage them to rout more quickly. Here we're back to that last Roman armoured general unit over on the right. It has the height advantage, but it's still cavalry fighting against pikemen. It doesn't have much of a chance. I can hold on for long enough for reinforcements to arrive. As you can see, the enemy army now has become quite a mess. It's more a matter of mopping up my opponent's troops than any serious kind of fighting. I'm assigning units to pursue each of his as they rout to discourage them from regrouping, and I'm targeting fire arrows against any that do regroup. I took no cavalry in this battle, however. The Thracians don't have much in the way of cavalry options, and I decided to base my army around foot troops, which means that I have no way of ensuring that enemy units don't come back. But as you can see, I've struck so decisive a blow to my opponent that it really doesn't matter. I can bring to bear massed archery, as here, against each individual Roman unit until it routs. Like that. Cowards! You wouldn't catch me running away from a storm of fire in the sky and a horde of maniacs with hungry faces and wild eyes carrying scythe blades on poles. Ha! Pitiful! And this last Roman armoured general unit that's regrouped catches a few spears up their arses. My victory is at hand, so what were my opponent's mistakes? Perhaps he should have attempted to dispute control of the hill at the beginning. However, having set himself upon a strategy of not doing so, he would have done better to select catapults rather than scorpions for the task of bringing me back down from its crest. He should have used them firing from the uttermost limit of their range instead of deploying right from the forward of the deployment area at the beginning. That way he could have brought me down off the hill onto level ground and fought me there. He should have taken greater numbers instead of a few elite troops, and he should have attempted outflanking manoeuvres to confuse and foul my phalanx line. I'm also entirely unpersuaded as to the utility of armoured bodyguards units in Rome Total War. Half the size, double the hit points, better stats. It isn't good enough. In my judgment, the return that you get back on the investment just isn't worth the expense in denarii on such a unit.